A few months ago, I published a video talking about my plans to convert Columbia Games' classic Eurofront board game into something that could be used to simulate the Siege of Terra and specifically the Siege of the Imperial Palace. And in this video, I'm going to show you the results of the first playtest that I've conducted with my friend Hunter. You're going to see some clips that I took during the playtest, and then at the end, we're going to have a closeout summary which talks about some of the things that I've learned about the Siege of Terra in general, and also about how the playtest went and where the project is going to move forward from here. All right, guys, so here we are with an update on the SolFront project. So Hunter and I have just set up the table. You can see the map that I've got printed out. In the center, there's the Imperial Palace. And then on the outskirts, we have some beachheads by the traitor forces. And they are angling to move up these lines of communication towards the major gates in the walls of the palace. So this is a initial stab at just laying out all of the units, kind of getting a feel for how many would be necessary to defend the walls, and then using that number to scale up the traitor forces to an appropriate amount. So you can kind of see the units here. So each one of these is going to stand on end. It's got a strength from usually about 2 to 4. And you can see the different icons representing different types of units, usually infantry, mechanized, or armor. Now, one of the key things about the game system that we're adapting this from is that it has inherent fog of war. So I'm going to take you around to the other side of the table. And you can see that now there is nothing on the back side. So all of those units, this is where Hunter will stand. So all of these units all along the defensive line, he knows there is something there, but not necessarily what they are or their strength. And then you can also see over here, of course, that his own units are facing him. And just as with my units, Hunter can see his own, but I cannot see the composition or the strength. So that's the basic concept. We're just kind of getting an idea of how many units we need. And from that, we can sort of get an estimate of just how many soldiers would be involved in the siege of the Imperial Palace. You can see I've got some static units defending these outflung hives. And then Hunter hasn't really done anything over here. So he's mostly focused on the northeast, the northwest, and then the southwest, looking to push up. So we'll see how this goes. We'll probably do maybe a couple more check-ins with you so you can see how it's progressing. But like I said, the main thing is just figuring out how many units would be needed to defend the Imperial Palace. And each one of these blocks represents a core size element. So we're talking somewhere around 30,000 soldiers, depending a little bit on what kind of core we're talking about. So anyway, I'm going to leave you there, and we'll check back in with you probably in a couple turns so you can see how this is developing. All right, so here we are. This is about 2 months into the siege. So the traitor forces have advanced primarily right up here on the northern edge. We've actually had a major engagement here just outside this gate. In the other sectors, the traitors have overrun a couple of the southwestern hives. This one's still holding out. And then over here on the northeast, there's also some valiant militia resistance holding back the traitor advance. So yeah, it's interesting so far. Still, like I said, we're just playtesting mostly to check out the map issues and unit density. But we're going to play a little bit more and see how it goes. All right, so the fight is really developing out here outside the gate. We got across these 3 hexes, we got engagements between the traitors and the loyalists. Zooming back now, can see that the traitor positions are slowly advancing, attacking this hive here, and then just moving up towards this western gate. A little further south, the traitor forces have finally secured this Indic hive and are now advancing on New Delhi, and then probably going to join an attack on those western gates. In the northeast, the traders have finally cleared out this hive, and they're going to be moving to attack this northeastern gate fairly soon. Loyalists have been pretty quiet. I've mostly just been watching the situation develop. I'll probably shuffle some units in and out of that northern hive, the northern gate, just to provide some reinforcements. So that's about it. This is the end of month 3. So theoretically, the scenario is only going to last 6 months. So that's theoretically when Gilliman is going to arrive with his fleet. So as far as the timing goes, we'll probably need to make some adjustments after this playtest, because otherwise Hunter's made it to the walls on the northern side, but the rest he's still advancing. So I think that's probably just a setup issue, and we'll come up with some ways to increase the ability of the traders to make contact along the other fronts more quickly, so that the situation can develop a little bit more with more speed. So one of the main reasons that I wanted to do this whole project in the first place was just to give us some kind of concrete idea of what would actually be involved in the siege of the Imperial Palace. And there's so much of the Warhammer lore and the Warhammer setting that's really kind of divorced from, to say reality sounds kind of harsh, but in a way it's true. And we see this in the things like the number of soldiers that are involved is often somewhat arbitrary and maybe doesn't feel particularly realistic. But the way that we've chosen to approach this by sort of converting Eurofront, which has a fixed geographical scale and confines the number of units based on, I think, their understanding of the paradigm of conflict during World War II and how many corps could really operate effectively within a certain area. And I wanted to sort of use that framework to really provide some constraints around which to base our judgments on what might have been involved in the siege of the Imperial Palace. And I think that's what we've done here. You've seen the map, you've seen the number of units, and you have to remember that each one of these units is about 30,000 soldiers. And the geography really determines and dictates how this engagement goes and how many soldiers can be packed into a certain area, how the lines of communication flow, and so on. And so that geography provides some kind of concrete way of giving us an upper limit on what might have been involved. And so, just to cut to the chase, roughly about 200 units were involved on the loyalist side in order to defend the perimeter walls, the outward entrenchments, and then the interior walls as well surrounding the palace itself. So that's just a matter of the number of units that can actually fit into the spaces defending the perimeter. Now, of course, theoretically, you could just pack the whole thing full. We don't have any kind of constraints in terms of logistics and so on, which is something that may come, later in this project if we go that far. But as it is, about 200 units is roughly 6 million soldiers. Okay, so we're basing that off the idea of a corps, which is what one of those blocks represents, being about 30,000 soldiers. So about 6 million soldiers in total. So if you're Horus and you're trying to lay siege to the Imperial Palace, you're probably estimating, especially when you have really no option. You have to take it by assault because you can't sit there and lay siege to it and wait for Gilliman to come and destroy your fleet and catch you on the ground. So you really have to take it quickly. You're probably going to need about 10 times that number of soldiers at least in order to have any kind of chance of storming the walls. So we're looking at something like 60 million soldiers just to take
the Imperial Palace. So again, this is a rough estimate based on geographic constraints and not necessarily based on, logistical supply realities. But I think it gives us a good benchmark to judge by. Some of the lessons that we've learned, and I think you may have seen from watching the playtest clips, that holding the out hives along those lines of communication is actually very important to delay the trader advance because the logistics require those lines of communication in order to pass through them. And if the loyalists can retain control of those outward hives, that logistics network can expand to support the trader advance. So another thing that the traders could do, which I think they do in the novels, is establish some kind of orbital beachhead, right? I think in the novels they like crash land these ships close to the walls, full of crazy beastmen and just drugged up gangers and so on. And these hulks provide sort of a logistical base in a way to get lots of units close to the walls very quickly to stop up the loyalist forces and then to develop the situation farther out from the walls with the more regular trader forces. Um, so that's kind of the rough lessons we've learned. There are some problems, I think, with the sort of the game conversion as it stands right now. And the first is there's just a lot of units to manage, and I'm not sure how much fun it is going to be. Because just as a single person, if you're managing 200 units, it's going to get really, it's going to be hard to do that. And as a trader player, if you're having 2,000 units, like, I mean, first of all, there's the practical problem of physically having that many counters. Then there's the other problem of how do you keep track? How do you move those in a timely way around the map and make it interesting? And particularly like in the original game, Eurofront, right? There's a lot of maneuver. You're fighting on the Western Front, you're fighting on the Eastern Front, you're conducting blitz operations to try to break through enemy lines, get around, cut them off from their logistical base. In this, it's really you're just throwing stuff at the walls until there's a breach and then trying to get through that. And then maybe there's a bit more maneuver, but then you make it to the inner walls and then you have to do that all over again. So then it becomes a matter of just literally managing the battle in a static position. And I don't know how fun that would be. It is sort of interesting that this is kind of like the Iron Warrior's Perturabo's role is just to keep track of all this stuff. He's all plugged into all these computers and cogitators and whatever, managing this siege. And so I think, this playtest kind of gives you an idea of what that might be like. You're just rotating units in and out of the battle line, trying to keep them fresh and strong enough to do enough damage to the enemy to cause a breach. So I think there's some interesting things here. I don't know how much more work I'm going to do on this particular project. I think it's very interesting to see everything sort of laid out, to kind of get a feel for it in a concrete way. And so that I think was valuable, and I think that was interesting. But I'm not sure if it's worth putting more effort into. I'll think about it. If you guys would like to see more, I guess let me know. I'm probably going to focus more maybe on the campaign system that I've talked about some for, a community engagement kind of thing. And again, if that's something that interests you, then stay tuned and let me know down in the comments. And so I think that's it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment if there's something more that you want to know about this project, and I'll try to explain it in the comments. And I'll see you in the next video.